Good morning and welcome to Maryland Today. My name's Jeff St. Pierre, and I think it's about time we welcome one of our favorite guests back in the studio. Joining me today is Nina Heck.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Now, Nina, I didn't finish your introduction. That's my fault. Director of Counseling and Client Services for Guidewell Financial Solutions. Well, Nina, today we're going to take a look at women and personal finance. I was surprised to learn that working women are the major income earners in nearly half of American families. What do we know about these working moms?
So, Jeff, one of the things that's surprising is that 40% of all the households with children under the age of 18 are mothers who are either the sole or primary source of the income. And that's up from 1960 when it was 11%.
Yeah.
And in these groups break down, so you have, according to a Pew Research, 37% are married mothers with higher incomes than their husbands, and then 63% are single parents earning substantially less than what the married peer was earning. So both of these groups, one of the things they share in common is that they still both struggle with finances from time to time.
Well, I have to say, I feel bad saying that I was surprised to hear about these statistics, but I guess the image that you have in your head is that the male of the family is the breadwinner. So it's interesting to see how these stats have grown over the years. What else do we know about these working moms?
So a few months ago, Ohio State University conducted a survey with the working women that participated with the National Foundation of Credit Counseling's Sharpen Your Financial Focus program. And of that research, 52% were breadwinner moms who took part were single, and 31% of those were divorced. And then as that relates to their personal finance, both groups of women worried about how they would make their ends meet due to maybe a reduced income or increased living expenses. So either contributing to the fact that they could end up with bad credit.
Yeah. Why don't we take a closer look at some of these concerns here? Why are breadwinner moms so worried about reductions in income?
Well, you have to realize that they're probably adhering to a very strict budget.
Sure.
So obviously, if they take a reduction in income, you've got a budget that's just barely meeting the expenses as is. So again, you've got to be very careful, and you've got to make sure that you've got things working the way they should be. Otherwise, you get out of control very fast.
Yeah.
The Ohio State University data revealed that 29% of the breadwinner moms were surveyed had already been affected by unemployment or underemployment. And then 22% had suffered negative financial consequences as a result of either domestic conflict, separation, or divorce.
Now, obviously, there are a ton of factors that can lead to a reduced income. So how can families safeguard themselves against possible financial setbacks?
So I always speak about this on your show, budget.
There it is.
So having a
I knew that word
sound
was coming
budget,
sooner or later.
yes, having a sound budget will obviously it won't cure everything, but it'll certainly keep the breadwinner mom on track to meet her expenses. And always start with, understanding that if you don't have a budget, it's never too late to start. And one of the things we stress at our organization with the counselors is that, if you haven't got a budget in place, start by tracking your expenses. Know you have fixed expenses, so you're going to track those things that can vary month to month, food, gas, different things like that. Once you have your budget in place, then you have to go back and revisit it because obviously things can change from month to month. And many of our working moms are already doing this. If you don't have a budget, you can certainly come to an organization like Guidewell Financial Solutions, and we can help with that. We also have an interactive budget on our website, which is www.guidewellfs.org.
Nina, can you give me that website one more time?
Yes, Jeff. It's www.guidewellfs.org.
So what else can breadwinner moms do to make sure that they're in a good standing and they're safe for the future?
One of the things that really helps is having somewhat of a savings, whether it's an emergency savings or a sound savings that covers maybe 3 to 6 months of their household expenses. Because as most of us know, you never know when that car's going to break down, someone becomes ill, you've got co-pays, you've got co-pays for tests, you've got co-pays for prescriptions. So a lot of things can happen that can really upset the budget. We suggest, look at a couple different things as far as when you're trying to set up a savings. One of the things I encourage people, maybe a tax time, if they have a refund coming, instead of being so quick to pay something off, put that aside and use that money so that you don't have to shortchange your budget or use a credit card in the future. Or if you pick up a part-time job, you might want to put some of that money aside. You haven't had the money anyway.
Yeah.
So it's newfound money. So, maybe putting some of that away. But really, ideally, it's just having that nest egg set aside so that it helps to cover some of the rainy day things that come up.
So you also said that working moms worry about dealing with increased expenses. Why is this such a big concern?
So one of the interesting facts that came out from the Pew survey showed that divorced and single mothers medium household incomes were averaging in the mid-20s.
Okay.
Versus the married mother who was the household breadwinner, their incomes average about $80,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
And keep in mind, a lot of that's because they've been privy to a college education.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So that helps a lot. You have to realize that if you are living paycheck to paycheck, any type of an increase in expense can just really wreak havoc on your finances. And as I said earlier about the medical expenses, just outstanding copays, things that can come up. Most individuals that we counsel, oftentimes when we look at their credit reports, we'll see a lot of collection accounts in their credit report for medical bills. And it's because people don't have that money set aside to pay those when they come up.
So when it comes to handling expenses, what do you recommend here?
Well, again, when handling your expenses, the budget is crucial.
Yeah.
So really keeping an eye on where you stand and what things are coming up in the future so that you recognize that you may need to do some changes because of unexpected expenses that may occur. Also, having that savings is going to help to, fortify that you don't have to shortchange yourself in the budget. You'll have that extra money set aside to use for that. And then finally, just looking at ways you can maybe reduce your expenses. Sometimes people can raise their tax exemption. Maybe, they're claiming 0. They might be able to go to 1 so that you don't have Uncle Sam accruing your money all year.
Sure.
You can get a little bit more back in your paycheck. You want to check with your tax person on this because I don't want to set you up to have a problem there. But it is an option. And also looking at, things like cell phones. Do you really need to have access to the Internet on your cell phone if you have, in fact, the Internet at home? So anything you can reduce will help to keep your expenses down.
Absolutely. Well, we talk about, just as much as we talk about budgets on this show, we also talk about credit being very important as well. So why is credit such a major concern for breadwinner moms?
So we look at this in 2 separate ways. Again, looking at our groups, we have the women that are divorced that probably have been used to living a certain way with 2-income family that's been taking care of their children, and now they're reduced to 1. And many times through the course of that divorce or separation, there's been some delinquency that may have occurred, because additional expenses are occurring. So oftentimes they're set out with a credit report, with a credit score that's already been affected because they've been paying bills late.
Yeah. On
the flip side of that, you have single parents that may not have sufficient income to really warrant getting good credit, so they might be privy to these, pre-approved and it's got a high interest rate. So we caution them to take out those types of things and really look at what type of interest rate these accounts are introducing to them when they're looking into their first form of credit.
Mm-hmm. Well, how can you tell if you've got good credit?
Well, having good credit obviously comes from making sure that you pay your bills on time and that you don't overextend yourself. So everything that we do in our credit feeds into our credit report. That information shows current and past delinquency. So one of the things you want to do is we have 3 major credit reporting agencies, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. So that information will be gathered on there. And the best way to tell is to request a copy of that credit report so you can see what you have. What we would recommend is that, the law allows a person to pull 1 free credit report a year, and we recommend that you go through annualcreditreport.com to do so.
Okay.
You can either pull all 3 at one time, or I often suggest that people pull them, just spread them out and maybe pull them once a quarter, especially if you have something on there that you might be disputing or you're trying to make sure that, some fraudulent act hasn't occurred. So if you spread them out, you'll be able to see what changed from one quarter to the next quarter.
Mm-hmm. And you said that website is annualcreditreport.com, right?
Yes, Jeff.
Now, there's a lot that you hear about on TV, a lot of different sites that come up, but this one is the only one that's authorized to do what you were just describing.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. This is the only one that everyone uses for this particular reason.
Okay, and again, that website one more time?
Is www.annualcreditreport.com.
Okay, so once you have a copy of your credit report, Nina, how can you tell what shape your credit is in?
So we always recommend that the person really go through and make sure that even the personal information is their own, as far as the name, the correct spelling, the addresses that they've lived, their employment status. I've often had people ask me why it lists that they're deceased when in fact they're not. So you really want to look at everything on there.
It's an important thing, yeah.
It is important. There's an area that shows collections and judgments. You want to make sure that those are in fact things you recognize to be yours. If they're not, then there's a process that will be included with the credit report on how to dispute information, so you want to go through that process and do so. This is very important because anything that's on there, you want to make sure, number one, that it is yours because it does affect your credit score, and that's very important for these women.
Well, something that you mentioned earlier is that, sometimes when you're in a situation, maybe it's a divorce, maybe you're a single parent in general, maybe you've come across some hard times. So how can a breadwinner mom who maybe has some bad credit make a fresh start?
The first thing is to really know what is on there and then make a plan on how you're going to progress to either get it paid or dispute or what your action's going to be. So understand with this, there's no real easy fix, and it does take time and patience. So you have to know that it's not just a matter of making a phone call and it's gone. Obviously, to have a better credit score, it means making your payments on time and not being behind, not running yourself to the limit on these credit cards that you might have, or overextending yourself. We get a lot of stuff in the mail every day that says pre-approved.
Yeah.
And if we sign up for all of these things, it won't take too long before we're going to be in trouble.
Sure. Well, what about using a credit repair company to maybe try to improve your credit rating?
We don't really advise this with the credit repair companies because actually there's nothing that they can do that you can't do yourself, and you won't have paid a fee for doing it yourself. So, if you don't understand your credit report or how to go about repairing it, you can contact an organization like us. We can certainly review your credit report with you and give you some ideas on what needs to happen. But I would really tell people to stay away from the credit repair because, again, that's things that a person can do for themselves.
So, Nina, what resources are available to working women who want to master their finances?
So we've really, been a part of this Sharpen Your Financial Focus program. I mentioned it earlier about the statistics that came from the National Foundation of Consumer Credit. It's located at sharpentoday.org, and it offers women a 3-point approach to their finances. The first, of course, is scheduling an appointment with a certified budget or credit counselor, such as Guidewell Financial Solutions, and this can help them set up their finances and determine best steps or practices to get more financially secure. We also, in the Sharpen program, there's a My Money Checkup.
Okay.
And that allows them an online tool to work with their budget. It'll give them some targeted suggestions and recommendations on how to become more financially adept. And then finally, the Sharpen program promotes local personal financial education. We have on our website different e-learning courses. There's also a community calendar that offers education presentations that are available to the community.
Well, that's great, Nina. As always, a ton of wonderful information today. Do you have any final advice?
Well, understand that at Guidewell Financial Solutions, we recognize that in both of these groups, women divorced, single, either, that there are things they're going to face they may need help with. So, understand that there are different strategies. If you're a young single mom and you're trying to build your personal finances, you need the confidence and skills to do that. And for those that may end up in a divorce or a widowed situation, then you're living on a limited income. And that, of course, has its own set of fears and needs as far as skills to handle that situation as well. So, I think I would always just suggest if you need some help, we're here to help you. And
if somebody wants to contact Guidewell Financial Solutions, where should they go?
They can call us at 1-800-642-2227, or they can go to our website at www.guidewellfs.org.
Well, Nina Heck, Director of Counseling and Client Services for Guidewell Financial Solutions, always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for all the wonderful information.
Thank you, Jeff.